The notification sound from my phone echoed through the empty apartment at 2:47 a.m. Another sleepless night, another mindless scroll through social media. But this message was different. It was from Victoria Sterling, the woman who had just turned my entire understanding of relationships, society, and myself completely upside down. Her words were simple. "Daniel, we need to talk. Tomorrow changes everything." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I stared at those words for what felt like hours, my heart racing, in a way that had nothing to do with the 3 cups of coffee I'd consumed that evening. 25 years separated us, but somehow, in the span of 6 months, that gap had become irrelevant. What started as a professional mentorship had evolved into something I never saw coming. Something that challenged every assumption I'd ever held about love, compatibility, and what society expects from us. The morning sun was already creeping through my blinds when I finally drifted off to sleep. Victoria's message burned into my memory. I had no idea that by sunset the next day, my life would be completely different. My story with Victoria began in the most ordinary way possible. A job interview at Henderson Marketing Solutions in downtown Seattle. It was March 15th, and I was desperate. My previous startup had crashed and burned spectacularly, leaving me with nothing but student debt and a bruised ego. At 28, I felt like I was already behind in life, watching my college friends climb corporate ladders while I was still trying to find my footing. The receptionist directed me to the conference room on the 32nd floor, where I waited nervously, adjusting my tie for the 100th time. The Seattle skyline stretched out before me through floor-to-ceiling windows, and I tried to calm my nerves by focusing on the distant mountains. Then she walked in. Victoria Sterling commanded attention without even trying. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon, and she wore a navy blazer that spoke of confidence and success. But what struck me most were her eyes, intelligent, piercing, and completely focused as she reviewed my resume. When she looked up and smiled, extending her hand for a firm handshake, I felt something shift in the room's energy. "Daniel Martinez," she said, her voice warm but professional. "I've been looking forward to this conversation. Your portfolio is impressive, especially considering your age." The interview lasted 2 hours. What was supposed to be a standard question and answer session turned into an engaging discussion about marketing strategies, consumer psychology, and the future of digital advertising. Victoria challenged every assumption I made, pushed back on my ideas in ways that made me think deeper, and somehow made me feel like I was exactly where I belonged. "You're hired," she said as we concluded, "but I want to be clear about something. I don't believe in coddling new employees. You'll be working directly with me on the Morrison account, and I expect nothing less than excellence." I nodded eagerly, not fully understanding what I was agreeing to. My first month at Henderson was a masterclass in humility. Victoria was demanding, meticulous, and had standards that seemed impossibly high. She would review my work with a red pen that seemed to never run out of ink, sending back presentations with notes that were longer than my original content. Other colleagues warned me that she was known as the Ice Queen, brilliant but cold, someone who had climbed to the top by being tougher than anyone else in the room. But I saw something different during our late-night strategy sessions, when it was just the two of us, working through campaign details over Chinese takeout. Victoria would let her guard down slightly. She'd share stories about her early career, the battles she'd fought to be taken seriously in a male-dominated industry, and the sacrifices she'd made along the way. "I was your age when I started here," she told me one evening in May as we reviewed client feedback. Except I was married with 2 small children, trying to prove that I could handle both motherhood and a demanding career. Spoiler alert, something had to give. I learned that Victoria had been divorced for over a decade. Her children, both older than me, lived across the country and rarely visited. She'd built an empire but had paid for it with isolation. Success had come at the cost of personal connections, and while she never said it directly, I could see the loneliness in her eyes during those quiet moments. The Morrison account became our shared obsession. We were pitching to a major retail chain, looking to rebrand their entire image, and the competition was fierce. Victoria and I spent countless hours together, analyzing market data, crafting presentations, and refining our strategy. Slowly, our relationship began to shift from boss and employee to something more collaborative. "You have good instincts," she told me one June evening as we finalized our pitch deck. "But you second-guess yourself too much. Trust your judgment." It was during the Morrison presentation that everything changed. We'd practiced our pitch dozens of times, but when technical difficulties arose during the actual meeting, I had to improvise. Instead of panicking, I drew on everything Victoria had taught me about reading a room and adapting on the fly. We landed the account, securing the biggest client in the company's history. The celebration dinner that night was just the two of us at a quiet restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. Victoria had insisted on champagne, and as the evening progressed, our conversation moved far beyond work. She talked about her dreams of traveling to New Zealand, her secret passion for pottery, and her fear that she'd missed out on truly living while building her career. "I've spent so many years being what everyone expected me to be," she said, gazing out at the water. "The responsible mother, the driven executive, the woman who has everything figured out. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been braver, if I'd taken more risks." "It's not too late," I found myself saying. "You're only 53. You have decades ahead of you." She laughed, but there was something wistful in her expression. "Age is just a number, right? That's what they say." That phrase would echo in my mind for weeks. Our working relationship continued to evolve throughout the summer. Victoria began including me in high-level strategy meetings, introducing me to clients as her right hand, and gradually giving me more autonomy. But it was the personal moments that really mattered, the shared jokes during boring conference calls, the way she'd bring me coffee when I was struggling with a deadline, the increasingly frequent dinners where we'd discuss everything except work. I started noticing small things about her. How she hummed softly when she was concentrating. The way she'd unconsciously tuck a strand of hair behind her ear when she was nervous. Her genuine laugh, which was completely different from her professional chuckle. These details accumulated over time, creating an intimacy that neither of us acknowledged but both of us felt. The first time someone commented on our relationship was in August. Marcus, one of the senior associates, pulled me aside after a team meeting. "You need to be careful," he said quietly. "People are starting to talk about you and Victoria. The way you two look at each other, all the private meetings. Just be smart about it." His words hit me like a cold splash of water. I hadn't realized that our connection was so obvious to others, and the implications terrified me. Victoria was not just my boss. She was one of the most powerful people in the company. Any suggestion of impropriety could destroy both our careers. I tried to create distance after that conversation, but it was impossible. We were too deep into shared projects, and Victoria seemed to sense my withdrawal. "Is everything okay?" she asked one evening as we were wrapping up a client presentation. "You've been different lately." I wanted to tell her about Marcus's warning, about the office gossip, about my growing confusion over what I was feeling for her. Instead, I just nodded and said I was tired, but Victoria wasn't someone who accepted surface-level answers. Over the next few weeks, she found ways to draw me out, to recreate the easy intimacy we'd shared before my self-imposed distance. She started suggesting we work from her home office occasionally, away from the prying eyes of our colleagues. Victoria's house in Queen Anne was a revelation. While her office persona was all sharp lines and neutral colors, her home was warm and inviting. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with everything from business biographies to poetry collections. Original artwork hung throughout, and I could see evidence of her pottery hobby in the handmade bowls and vases scattered around the living room. "This is who I really am," she said, catching me admiring a particularly beautiful ceramic piece. "The office is just a costume I wear." Working from her home changed everything. Without the formal structure of the office environment, our conversations became more personal, more honest. Victoria would make elaborate lunches, and we'd eat on her back deck overlooking the Sound. She'd tell me stories about her children's childhoods, her failed marriage, and her dreams for the future. In return, I shared my own fears about career failure, my complicated relationship with my traditional Mexican-American family, and my uncertainty about what I really wanted from life. It was during one of these afternoon conversations in September that the line between professional and personal finally blurred beyond recognition. We were discussing a challenging client situation when Victoria suddenly stopped mid-sentence and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. "Daniel," she said softly, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully." My heart started racing. I knew whatever she was about to say would change everything. "I've been in this industry for over 25 years, she continued, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly. "I've worked with hundreds of people, mentored dozens of young professionals, and I've always maintained perfect boundaries. But with you, she paused, searching for the right words. "With you, I feel like I'm waking up after a very long sleep. You make me remember who I used to be before I became so focused on being successful, before I forgot how to take risks." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat, the distant sound of traffic, the gentle lapping of water against the shore below her house. "Victoria," I finally managed to say. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied. "I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest about what's happening here, because pretending it's not real isn't working anymore." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I looked at this woman who had become so important to me, who had challenged me professionally and personally in ways I'd never experienced. The 25-year age gap that had seemed so significant suddenly felt irrelevant compared to the connection we'd built. "Age is just a number," I said, echoing her words from months earlier. She smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, Victoria Sterling looked vulnerable. "Is it really?" she asked. That question hung in the air between us as we sat on her deck, watching the sun set over Seattle. Neither of us had answered it yet, but I could feel that we were about to find out. The next morning arrived with an awkwardness I'd never experienced with Victoria before. We both showed up to her home office earlier than usual, each trying to pretend that the previous evening's conversation hadn't happened. She busied herself with coffee preparation while I arranged client files with unnecessary precision. The comfortable rhythm we'd developed over months felt suddenly fragile. "About last night," Victoria finally said, not looking up from her laptop screen. "I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. We can go back to working at the main office if you prefer." The careful distance in her voice stung more than I expected. "Do you want to go back?" She paused her typing and finally met my eyes. "What I want and what's appropriate are two different things, Daniel." Before I could respond, her phone rang. It was James Morrison himself, calling about an urgent expansion of our campaign. Within minutes, we were back in full professional mode, coordinating with the creative team, scheduling emergency client meetings, and managing a crisis that required both our complete attention. Over the next 2 weeks, the Morrison emergency consumed us. We were working 16-hour days, grabbing meals between conference calls, and falling asleep on Victoria's couch more often than when I went home to my own apartment. The intensity of the project pushed our personal situation into the background. But it also forced us into an even closer partnership. It was during one of these marathon work sessions that I witnessed something that changed how I saw Victoria entirely. We were on a video call with Morrison's board of directors, presenting revised strategy proposals, when one of the board members, a man roughly Victoria's age, made a series of increasingly condescending comments about our recommendations. "I'm not sure a boutique firm like yours really understands the complexities of national retail," he said, his tone dripping with dismissal. "Perhaps you should stick to smaller, local campaigns." I watched Victoria's face remain perfectly composed, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tightening around her eyes. She responded with facts, data, and calm professionalism, systematically dismantling his objections without ever raising her voice or showing irritation. After the call ended, she sat quietly for a long moment, staring at her hands. 30 years, she said finally. 30 years of proving myself over and over again to men who assume I got where I am through luck or favors. You'd think it would get easier. The vulnerability in her voice broke something open in my chest. He was an idiot, Victoria. Your presentation was flawless. She looked at me with surprise, as if she'd forgotten I was there. You really think so? I know so. I've learned more about strategic thinking from you in 6 months than I learned in 4 years of business school. That guy couldn't run a lemonade stand, let alone judge your capabilities. For the first time in days, she smiled genuinely. Thank you. I needed to hear that. The Morrison project concluded successfully in early October. We'd not only salvaged the campaign, but expanded it into a multi-year partnership worth millions. The victory celebration at the main office was elaborate, with the entire company acknowledging that Victoria and I had saved one of their most important accounts. But success brought its own complications. The attention our partnership received made the office gossip more intense. I started noticing the way conversations stopped when I walked into rooms, the speculative glances between colleagues, the careful way people spoke around us. The breaking point came during the company's annual awards dinner. Victoria was receiving recognition for the Morrison campaign, and I was being honored as Rising Star of the Year. As we posed for photos together, holding our respective awards, I heard someone behind me whisper, "Wonder what she had to do to get him that promotion." The comment was clearly meant for me to hear. I turned around to find Brad Hutchinson, a senior manager who'd been passed over for several promotions, smirking at me with obvious malice. "Something you want to say directly?" I asked, my voice carrying more edge than I intended. "Just wondering about your rapid advancement," Brad replied, loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. "Must be nice having such a dedicated mentor." Before I could respond, Victoria appeared beside me. Her expression was serene, but her voice cut through the ambient party noise like a blade. "Brad," she said pleasantly, "I couldn't help but overhear your concern about Daniel's advancement. Since you seem interested in professional development, let's discuss your own performance metrics from the last quarter. I believe your client retention rate was, what was it, 63%? Daniel's was 97%, in case you were curious about merit-based advancement." Brad's face flushed red as several people nearby turned to listen. Victoria continued with deadly calm. "If you have concerns about company policies or specific personnel decisions, I encourage you to discuss them with HR through proper channels. Public speculation about colleagues' professional relationships is, I'm sure you know, grounds for disciplinary action." She smiled sweetly and guided me away, leaving Brad standing alone while the people around him quickly found other conversations to join. "You didn't have to do that," I told her once we were alone on the hotel balcony. "Yes, I did," she replied firmly. "I won't let anyone diminish your accomplishments or question your integrity because of rumors about us." "Are they just rumors?" I asked quietly. Victoria looked out at the city lights for a long moment. "I don't know anymore, Daniel. I honestly don't know. That night marked a turning point. Victoria began making subtle changes to our working arrangement. She assigned me to more independent projects, reduced our one-on-one meetings, and started including other team members in tasks we would previously have handled together. The professional distance she created was effective but painful. I tried to respect her boundaries, but the shift felt like losing something essential. Our easy communication became formal and careful. The spontaneous conversations that had made work enjoyable disappeared. Even our successful collaborations felt hollow without the personal connection that had made them meaningful. The situation came to a head in late October during a routine client meeting. We were presenting to a potential new account when the client asked about our working relationship and the secret to our successful partnerships. Victoria's response was so professionally detached, so carefully neutral, that it felt like a rejection of everything we'd built together. Mr. Martinez and I maintain a strictly professional relationship focused on delivering optimal results for our clients, she said in a tone I'd never heard her use with me before. After the meeting, I couldn't contain my frustration any longer. Is that really what we are? I asked as we waited for the elevator. A strictly professional relationship. Victoria glanced around the busy lobby, then pulled me aside into an empty conference room. What do you want me to say, Daniel? That I've developed feelings for someone young enough to be my son? That I think about you constantly and wonder what might have been if we'd met under different circumstances? That I lie awake at night questioning everything I thought I knew about myself? Her honesty hit me like a physical blow. Victoria ... I'm 53 years old, she continued, her voice breaking slightly. I've built my entire identity around being the consummate professional, the woman who never lets emotions cloud her judgment. And then you walked into that conference room and turned my entire world upside down. You think I don't feel the same way? I asked, stepping closer. You think this is easy for me? I've never felt this connected to anyone, and it terrifies me because I know how impossible it seems. It is impossible, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Why? Because of what other people think? Because of some number that represents the years between when we were born, when we're together, working together, talking together. Does any of that matter? Victoria looked at me with an expression that was equal parts longing and fear. You don't understand the implications, Daniel. The power dynamic, the office politics, the judgment we'd face. This isn't just about us. Then let's make it about us, I said, surprising myself with my boldness. Have dinner with me tonight. Not as colleagues, not as mentors and mentees. Just like Victoria and Daniel. She stared at me for what felt like an eternity. One dinner? And then we'll know what? Whether age really is just a number. That evening, I waited for Victoria at a small Italian restaurant in Ballard, far from anywhere we might encounter colleagues. I'd chosen the location carefully, intimate but not romantic, quiet but not secretive. I wanted neutral ground where we could explore whatever was happening between us without the weight of professional expectations. She arrived 10 minutes late, having changed from her business attire into dark jeans and a soft green sweater that made her eyes look almost luminous. Seeing her outside of our usual context was jarring. She looked younger, more relaxed, more like the person I glimpsed during our private conversations. This feels very strange, she admitted as we were seated at a corner table. Good strange. Or bad strange. I'm not sure yet. The first hour was awkward. We both kept falling back into work-related topics, discussing clients and projects as a safe harbor from more personal territory. But gradually, over shared appetizers and a bottle of wine Victoria selected, our conversation began to shift. Tell me about your family, she said, apparently deciding to dive into deeper waters. I told her about my parents' immigration from Guadalajara, their struggles to establish themselves in America, their dreams for their children's success. I explained how my father's construction business had funded my education, how my mother worked 2 jobs to ensure I could focus on school, and how their sacrifices weighed on me daily. They want me married with children by now, I admitted. They don't understand why I'm so focused on career advancement, instead of settling down with a nice girl from the neighborhood. "And what do you want?" Victoria asked. "I want to build something meaningful. I want to create success that honors their sacrifices but doesn't limit me to their expectations." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that tension. My parents wanted me to be a teacher or nurse, something appropriate for a woman. When I told them I was going into marketing, my father said I was being unrealistic." "Do you regret the choices you made?" She considered the question carefully. "I regret some of the costs. I regret missing so many of my children's important moments because I was traveling for work. I regret ending my marriage because I couldn't balance everything. But I don't regret becoming who I am professionally. What about personally? Do you regret who you've become personally?" Victoria's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "I don't know who I am personally anymore. I've been Victoria Sterling, marketing executive, for so long that I'm not sure there's anyone else underneath." "There is," I said quietly. "I see her sometimes when you think no one's watching. When you're examining your pottery pieces or humming while you work. When you talk about places you want to travel or books you love, she's there." "Is that who you're interested in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm interested in all of you. The brilliant executive who challenges me professionally and the woman who makes ceramic bowls in her spare time and dreams of New Zealand." Victoria looked down at her hands, and I could see her internal struggle playing out across her features. "Daniel, I need you to understand something. If we cross this line, there's no going back. Our working relationship will be complicated forever. People will question every professional success you achieve. They'll assume I've given you unfair advantages. And what about you? What will they assume about you?" Her laugh was bitter. "They'll assume I'm a desperate older woman taking advantage of a younger man's ambition. They'll say I'm pathetic, trying to reclaim my youth through someone your age. Do you care what they think? I've spent my entire career caring what people think. It's kept me safe, kept me professional, kept me successful. Has it kept you happy?" The question hung between us as our server cleared our plates and offered dessert. Victoria declined, but asked for another glass of wine. I could see her weighing risks and possibilities, professional concerns against personal desires. "I haven't been truly happy in years," she finally admitted. "Content, successful, secure, yes, but happy? I can't remember the last time I felt genuinely happy. What would make you happy?" She looked directly at me for the first time all evening. "Right now? Taking a risk for once in my life instead of always playing it safe." "What kind of risk?" "The kind where a 53-year-old woman admits she's falling for her 28-year-old colleague and doesn't care who judges her for it." My heart stopped beating for a moment. Victoria ... I know it's complicated. I know it's unconventional. I know all the reasons it won't work. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "But for the first time in decades, I want to do something just because it feels right, not because it's appropriate or expected or professionally advantageous." Her hand was warm and soft, and the simple contact sent electricity through my entire body. "So what do we do now?" I asked. Victoria smiled, and it was the most genuine, unguarded expression I'd ever seen from her. "Now we find out if age really is just a number." Walking Victoria to her car that night felt like stepping into uncharted territory. The October air was crisp, and the streetlights cast long shadows as we moved slowly down the sidewalk, neither of us wanting the evening to end. When we reached her silver Audi, she turned to face me, and I could see uncertainty flickering in her eyes despite her earlier declarations. "I should probably think about this more rationally," she said, fishing for her keys, but not making any. Move to unlock the car, should you? I asked, stepping closer. When was the last time you did something just because it felt right instead of because it made logical sense? Victoria laughed softly. Honestly, I can't remember. That's probably not a good sign. Or maybe it's exactly the sign you needed. She looked up at me, and in that moment, something shifted. Without overthinking it, I reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The simple gesture felt monumental, crossing the invisible barrier we'd maintained for months. "Daniel," she whispered, but she didn't pull away. "We don't have to figure everything out tonight," I said. "We just have to decide if we want to try." Instead of answering with words, Victoria stepped closer and kissed me. It was soft, tentative, and lasted only a few seconds, but it changed everything. When we separated, she rested her forehead against mine. "This is terrifying," she breathed. "I know, but it's also right." The next few weeks were a delicate dance of secrecy and discovery. We continued working together professionally, but now there was an undercurrent of something deeper. Victoria would brush her fingers against mine. When passing documents, I'd find excuses to bring her coffee, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. We developed a private language of glances and subtle touches that somehow made even mundane meetings feel electric. Our first real date happened the following Saturday. Victoria had suggested a hiking trail in the Cascades, far from the city and anyone who might recognize us. I met her at the trailhead early in the morning, surprised to see her in hiking boots and athletic wear that revealed a side of her I'd never witnessed. "I used to do this every weekend when I was younger," she explained as we started up the trail. "Before work consumed my entire life." The 3-mile hike gave us uninterrupted time to talk without the constraints of office walls or professional personas. Victoria told me about her childhood in Portland, her dreams of becoming a travel writer before practical considerations led her into marketing. I shared stories about growing up bilingual, the pressure of being the first in my family to attend college, and my secret ambition to eventually start my own consulting firm. "You should do it," she said as we reached a scenic overlook. "Start your own company, I mean. You have the skills and the vision. Right now I'm learning too much from you to even think about leaving." Victoria smiled, but there was something wistful in her expression. "You won't stay forever, Daniel. Ambitious people like you never do. Are you trying to get rid of me already?" "I'm trying to be realistic about what this is," she said, gesturing between us. "You're 28 years old with your whole career ahead of you. I'm 53 with most of my major decisions already made. Our timelines don't exactly align." I turned to face her fully. What if they don't have to align perfectly? What if we just focus on right now? Right now doesn't last forever. Neither does anything else. That doesn't mean it's not worth experiencing. We stood there on the mountain overlook, Seattle spread out far below us, both of us grappling with the complexity of what we'd started. Victoria reached for my hand, intertwining our fingers. "I haven't felt this young in years," she admitted. "Being with you makes me remember what it was like to take risks, to feel excited about possibilities instead of just managing responsibilities. And being with you makes me feel more mature, more focused. Like I understand what I really want instead of just reacting to whatever comes next." The physical relationship developed gradually, respectfully. Victoria was cautious about moving too fast, conscious of the power dynamics and age difference, even in private moments. Our first night together happened naturally, 3 weeks after that initial kiss. We'd been working late at her house, reviewing quarterly reports, when a power outage plunged the neighborhood into darkness. "I have candles somewhere," Victoria said. Feeling her way around the living room, I used my phone's flashlight to help her locate emergency supplies, and soon we had several candles flickering throughout the room. The warm, intimate lighting transformed the familiar space into something entirely different. "This is actually kind of nice," Victoria said, settling onto the couch beside me with 2 glasses of wine. "Much better than fluorescent office lighting." She laughed, and in the candlelight she looked radiant. The stress lines around her eyes had softened, and there was a relaxation in her posture I rarely saw during business hours. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a comfortable silence. "Anything. Do you ever wonder if you're missing out on experiences with people your own age? Dating someone who's figuring out life at the same stage you are?" I considered the question seriously. "Honestly, I've dated people my age, Victoria. Most of them are still trying to decide what they want to be when they grow up. They're focused on partying, on keeping their options open, on avoiding anything that feels too serious. That's not what I want anymore. What do you want?" "I want someone who challenges me intellectually. Someone who's confident in who they are. Someone who's not afraid of depth or complexity or real conversation." I paused, looking directly at her. "I want someone exactly like you." Victoria set down her wine glass and moved closer to me on the couch. "Even with all the complications?" "Especially with all the complications. Easy things don't usually turn out to be worth much." When she kissed me that night, it was different from the tentative kiss in the restaurant parking lot. This was certain, intentional, full of promise. What followed was tender and passionate, a perfect blend of Victoria's maturity and my enthusiasm. Afterward, as we lay together on her couch, the candle still flickering around us, I felt a sense of completeness I'd never experienced before. "I should probably feel guilty about this," Victoria murmured against my shoulder. "Do you?" "No. That's what surprises me most." November brought new challenges. The secrecy was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain, especially as our emotional connection deepened. We found ourselves stealing moments throughout the day, quick conversations in empty conference rooms, shared looks during team meetings, text messages that had nothing to do with work. The breaking point came during the company's Thanksgiving potluck. Victoria and I were carefully maintaining professional distance, but apparently not as successfully as we thought. Janet from HR approached me as I was getting coffee. "Can we talk privately for a moment?" she asked, her tone serious. My stomach dropped. "Of course." Janet led me to a quiet corner of the break room. "Daniel, I need to ask you directly. Are you involved in a personal relationship with Victoria Sterling?" I felt my face flush. "Why would you ask that?" "Because it's my job to ask when multiple employees express concerns about potential conflicts of interest. You've been receiving high-profile assignments, significant recognition, and rapid advancement. If there's a personal relationship influencing professional decisions, we need to address it immediately." "My performance speaks for itself," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm sure it does. But perception matters too. If there's nothing going on, then there shouldn't be any issue with you confirming that." I stood there, caught between protecting Victoria and being honest with HR. "I think you should speak with Victoria directly if you have concerns about her professional judgment." Janet's expression told me she'd gotten the answer she was looking for. "I'll be doing that. In the meantime, I'd suggest being very careful about appearances." That afternoon, Victoria called me into her office with an expression I'd never seen before, professional but with underlying panic. "HR spoke with you today," she said. It wasn't a question. Janet asked some direct questions. I didn't confirm anything, but I don't think I denied it very convincingly either. Victoria closed her office door and sat down heavily behind her desk. She asked me to, point blank, if we're involved romantically. What did you tell her? I told her that my professional relationships are based solely on merit and performance, which is true. But she's not stupid, Daniel. She knows we didn't answer her real question. We stared at each other across her desk, both understanding that our careful balance was about to collapse. What happens now? I asked. Now we have to decide if this is worth potentially destroying both our careers. Is it? Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring out her office window at the Seattle skyline. 3 months ago, I would have said absolutely not. Career always comes first. Personal feelings are secondary. Protect your professional reputation. At all costs. And now? Now I'm wondering what the point of having a perfect career is if you're miserable in every other aspect of your life. That evening, we met at Victoria's house to discuss our options. The conversation was unlike any we'd had before, completely honest about the risks and potential consequences of continuing our relationship. Worst case scenario, Victoria said, pacing her living room. They could force one of us to transfer to a different department or different office. They could cite concerns about favoritism, conflicts of interest, inappropriate workplace relationships. Would you be willing to transfer? To keep seeing you? Yes, but it would mean starting over. Professionally, rebuilding relationships, proving myself all over again. What about me leaving the company entirely? Victoria stopped pacing. I don't want you to sacrifice your career for this relationship. Maybe it wouldn't be a sacrifice. Maybe it would be an opportunity to finally start that consulting firm. We talked about, with what clients, what capital, what business plan. I'd been thinking about this possibility for weeks, ever since Janet's confrontation. With you as my first client, Henderson could contract with my firm for specific projects. It would remove the direct reporting relationship while maintaining our professional collaboration. Victoria stared at me. You've really thought this through. I've thought about every possible way to make this work without either of us giving up what we've built. And if Henderson refuses to work with your hypothetical consulting firm, then I'll find other clients. You've taught me everything I need to know about building client relationships and delivering results. Victoria sat down beside me on the couch. This is incredibly risky, Daniel. Starting a business is hard enough without doing it under these circumstances. Everything worthwhile is risky. You taught me that too. She took my hands in hers. Are you sure about this? Really sure? Because once we make this choice, once we stop hiding and deal with the consequences directly, there's no going back to the way things were. I looked at this remarkable woman who had changed my life in every possible way. She'd challenged me professionally, supported my growth, and awakened feelings I didn't know I was capable of experiencing. The age difference that had seemed so significant when we first met now felt irrelevant compared to the connection we'd built. I'm sure, I said. I want to build something with you, Victoria. Not just professionally, but personally too. I want to see what happens when we stop worrying about what other people think and focus on what makes us happy. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Age really is just a number, isn't it? I told you so. No, you didn't. You asked me if it was. There's a difference. So what's the answer? Victoria leaned forward and kissed me, soft and sure and full of promise. The answer, she said against my lips, is that love doesn't follow rules or timelines or social expectations. It just is. The next morning, I walked into Janet's office and requested a meeting to discuss my resignation. 2 hours later, Victoria did the same, but announced a major shift in project management, structure that would involve contracting with independent consultants for specialized services. By December 1st, Martinez Strategic Consulting was officially in business with Henderson Marketing Solutions as our first major client. The office gossip mill went crazy for about a week, but when the dust settled and it became clear that Victoria and I were no longer in a direct reporting relationship, the controversy died down. What didn't die down was the whispered speculation about our personal relationship. But standing in Victoria's kitchen that first Sunday morning as an official couple, watching her make pancakes while humming softly to herself, I realized I didn't care what anyone whispered about. Any regrets? She asked, catching me staring at her with what was probably a ridiculously sappy expression. Only that we waited so long to figure this out. Victoria smiled and pulled me closer. Well, we have plenty of time to make up for it. We have all the time in the world. 6 months into our official relationship, I discovered that dating Victoria Sterling came with challenges I'd never anticipated. It wasn't the age difference that created problems. It was everything else that came with loving someone who'd lived 25 more years than I had. The first major test came at Christmas when Victoria insisted I meet her children. Rachel was 31, a pediatric surgeon in Boston, and Michael was 29, just 1 year older than me, working as a software engineer in Austin. The prospect of meeting them terrified me more than any client presentation ever had. They're going to hate me, I told Victoria as we prepared for their arrival at SeaTac Airport. They're going to be curious about you, she corrected, adjusting my collar unnecessarily. There's a difference. I'm younger than both of them, Victoria. How do I even introduce myself? Hi, I'm dating your mom, and I'm probably younger than some of your college friends. Victoria stopped fussing with my appearance and took my hands. You introduce yourself as Daniel, someone who cares deeply about their mother and makes her happy. That's all they need to know initially. Rachel arrived first, stepping off her red-eye flight, looking exactly like a younger version of Victoria. Same intelligent eyes, same confident posture, same ability to assess a situation in seconds. When Victoria introduced us, Rachel's handshake was firm and her smile polite but reserved. So you're the famous Daniel I've been hearing about, she said, her tone carefully neutral. Hopefully not too famous, I replied, trying to match her diplomatic approach. Mom's told me you're incredibly talented. She doesn't praise people lightly. The drive to Victoria's house was filled with catch-up conversation between mother and daughter, giving me a chance to observe their dynamic. Rachel was clearly protective of Victoria, asking pointed questions about work stress, health, and weather. She was taking time for herself. I could see where Victoria had learned her direct communication style. Michael's arrival 3 hours later shifted the energy completely. He bounded through Victoria's front door with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely loved coming home, immediately wrapping his mother in a bear hug that lifted her off the ground. There's my favorite marketing genius, he said, spinning her around before setting her down and turning to me. And you must be the guy who's been making my mom smile in all her photos lately. His approach was so different from Rachel's careful evaluation that I felt some of my tension ease. Guilty as charged, I said, shaking his hand. Good, she deserves someone who makes her smile. That first dinner together was a masterclass in family dynamics. Rachel asked thoughtful questions about my business, my background, and my plans for the future. Michael told stories about his latest projects and made everyone laugh with impressions of his co-workers. Victoria glowed with happiness, clearly thrilled to have her children home and eager for us to know each other. But it was later that evening, after Victoria had gone to bed, that the real conversations happened. I was cleaning up the kitchen when Rachel appeared beside me, drying dishes without being asked. "Can I speak frankly?" she said after several minutes of comfortable silence. "Please do. My mother has been alone for a long time. She threw herself into work after the divorce, and we rarely saw her with anyone who made her genuinely happy. In the past year, she's been different, lighter, more like the person she used to be before she became so focused on professional success." I nodded, not sure where she was going with this. "I'm not concerned about the age difference," Rachel continued. "I'm concerned about my intentions. My mother is successful, financially secure, and emotionally vulnerable in ways she doesn't always recognize. If you're looking for someone to take care of you or advance your career, you should know that I will make your life very difficult." Her directness was startling but not entirely unexpected. I started my own company specifically to avoid any appearance of career advancement through our relationship, I said. And I've never asked Victoria for financial support of any kind. What do you want from her then? I considered the question carefully. I want to build something real with someone I love and respect. I want to support her dreams the same way she supported mine. I want to be the person she comes home to at the end of difficult days. Rachel studied my face for a long moment. She loves you, you know. Really loves you, not just infatuation or companionship. I haven't seen her invest in someone since my father, and that was over 15 years ago. I love her too. Good, because if you hurt her, pediatric surgeon or not, I will find creative ways to make you regret it. Despite the threat, Rachel's smile was warm, but I don't think you will. You look at her the way someone should look at the person they love. Michael's approach was completely different. He cornered me the next morning while Victoria was at her pottery class. "Dude, this is so weird," he said, settling onto the couch beside me with his coffee. "You're basically my age. We probably have more in common with each other than you do with my mom. Does that bother you?" Honestly, at first it did. I kept thinking about how my friends would react to my mom dating someone our age. But then, I saw how happy she is, and I realized my hang-ups are my problem, not yours. He paused, taking a sip of his coffee. "Can I ask you something, though? What's it like dating someone with so much more life experience? Doesn't it feel unbalanced sometimes?" I'd been expecting this question from someone, and I was grateful Michael felt comfortable asking directly. "Sometimes, yeah. Victoria has already experienced things I'm just starting to think about. Marriage, children, divorce, major career achievements. But instead of making me feel inadequate, it makes me feel like I'm learning from someone who's already navigated those waters." "What about the future? Kids, marriage, all that traditional stuff. We talk about it. Victoria's been honest that her child-rearing days are behind her, and I respect that. If having biological children was essential to my happiness, this relationship wouldn't work, but it's not. What's essential is building a life with someone who challenges me and supports me and makes me want to be better." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "She seems happier than she's been in years. That's what matters to me." The 3-day visit established a foundation of mutual respect, if not immediate closeness. Rachel remained somewhat reserved, but showed clear approval of how I treated her mother. Michael embraced me as a sort of older brother figure, texting me memes and asking for advice about his own dating life even after returning to Austin. But the real revelation came from watching Victoria with her children. She was more relaxed, more playful, more openly affectionate than I'd ever seen her. Motherhood had been one of the defining experiences of her life, and seeing her in that role gave me new insight into who she was beyond the professional persona. "Thank you," she said the night after they left, as we cleaned up the remnants of our farewell dinner. "For what? For being so patient with them. For understanding how important their approval is to me. For not being intimidated by the fact that they're essentially your peers. They're wonderful, Victoria. I can see so much of you in both of them." Rachel was skeptical at first. "I know. She threatened to make my life difficult if I hurt you." Victoria laughed. "That sounds like Rachel. What did you tell her?" "That I love you and have no intention of hurting you." "And Michael?" asked a lot of thoughtful questions about our future and whether I felt out of my depth dating someone with more life experience. Victoria turned to face me fully. "Do you feel out of your depth?" "Sometimes, but not in a bad way. More like I'm constantly learning and growing because I'm with someone who's already learned so much." "What about the future, though?" Michael was right to ask about that. "We've talked around it, but we haven't really addressed some of the bigger questions." I knew this conversation was coming eventually. "What questions specifically?" Victoria sat down at her kitchen table, and I joined her. "Marriage, for one. I've been married before, and it didn't end well. The idea of doing it again feels complicated." "Do you want to get married again? In general, I mean." "I used to think I didn't. But being with you has made me reconsider a lot of assumptions about what I thought I wanted for the rest of my life. And children? I'm 53, Daniel. Even if I wanted more children, which I'm not sure I do, the practical realities make it extremely unlikely. I reached across the table and took her hand. I need you to know that I've thought about this extensively. When I imagine my future, I see you in it. I see us traveling together, building our careers together, maybe getting a dog, hosting dinner parties, growing old together. The traditional nuclear family path isn't what I want. What if you change your mind? What if you wake up in 5 years and realize you want things I can't give you? What if you wake up in 5 years and realize you want someone who's already established, someone who doesn't need to figure out so much about life? What if you get tired of dating someone who's still learning lessons you mastered decades ago? Victoria smiled. Touché. I suppose any relationship involves uncertainty about the future. The difference is that uncertainty doesn't scare me when it comes to us. What scares me is the thought of not having this, not having you, because we're too afraid to take the risk. So what are you saying? I stood up and walked around the table to kneel beside her chair. I'm saying that I want to marry you, Victoria Sterling. Not because it's what people expect or because it follows some predetermined timeline, but because I want to make the biggest commitment possible to building a life together. Victoria's eyes widened. Daniel ... I don't have a ring yet, and this isn't the romantic proposal you deserve, but I need you to know that marriage isn't something I'm avoiding or postponing. It's something I want with you when you're ready. Victoria cupped my face in her hands. Are you proposing to me in my kitchen at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday? I'm telling you that I want to propose to you when the moment is right, when we're both sure, when it feels like the natural next step instead of a response to other people's questions about our future. And when do you think that might be? When you stop looking terrified at the mention of marriage and start looking excited about it. Victoria laughed, and some of the tension left her shoulders. I'm working on it. This is all so different from what I planned for this stage of my life. Good or bad, definitely a good difference. Scary good different. Spring brought new developments in both our personal and professional lives. Martinez Strategic Consulting had grown beyond just my contract with Henderson, landing 3 additional clients through referrals and Victoria's industry connections. She'd been promoted to Senior Vice President, partly as recognition for the innovative consulting model she'd helped develop. Our relationship had found its rhythm. We spent most nights at Victoria's house but maintained my apartment for when we needed space or when her children visited. We traveled together for both business and pleasure, discovering that we were excellent travel companions despite different preferences for planning versus spontaneity. The age difference rarely came up anymore, except in amusing moments when cultural references revealed our different generational experiences. Victoria would make jokes about movies from the 1980s that I'd never seen. I'd reference social media trends that mystified her completely. These differences became sources of entertainment rather than concern, but it was during a weekend trip to Victoria's family cabin in the San Juan Islands that everything crystallized for both of us. We'd been together for over a year, navigating the various challenges and adjustments that came with blending 2 very different life stages. We were sitting on the cabin's deck, watching the sunset over the water when Victoria brought up something that had been on her mind. I had coffee with my friend Margaret yesterday, she said. She's also 53, recently divorced, and she's been asking me about my situation with you. What kind of questions? The usual. Whether I'm worried about you leaving me for someone younger. Whether I feel self-conscious about aging while you're still in your 20s. Whether I think you're using me as some kind of stepping stone. I turned to face her. And what did you tell her? I told her that those concerns say more about her insecurities than they do about our relationship, but it got me thinking about something. What? Victoria took my hand. I realized that I've stopped seeing myself through other people's eyes when I'm with you. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I'm not constantly evaluating whether I'm too old, too serious, or too focused on work. You make me feel ageless. You are ageless. Age really is just a number, remember? No, it's not just a number. Age represents experience, perspective, growth, change. But what I've learned is that those things don't have to create barriers between people. They can create balance. I squeezed her hand. What are you saying? Victoria stood up and walked to the deck railing, looking out at the water. I'm saying that I want to stop being careful about this relationship. I want to stop hedging my bets and protecting myself from potential future heartbreak. I want to be all in. I've been all in since that first dinner in Ballard. She turned back to me with a smile that was pure joy. Then I have something to tell you. What? I bought you a ring. My heart stopped. You what? Victoria laughed at my expression. I know it's unconventional, but everything about us has been unconventional. You told me you wanted to marry me when I was ready. Well, I'm ready. She disappeared into the cabin and returned with a small black box. Daniel Martinez, will you marry me? I stared at her in complete shock. Victoria, Before you answer, I want you to know what you're agreeing to. You're agreeing to marry someone who snores, who gets grumpy when she's hungry, who will probably never fully understand social media. Someone who's already been divorced once and made plenty of mistakes. Someone who comes with adult children and complicated family dynamics. Are you trying to talk me out of saying yes? I'm trying to be honest about what you're getting into. I stood up and took the box from her hands. Victoria Sterling, you're agreeing to marry someone who leaves dishes in the sink, who gets overly competitive playing board games, who still doesn't know how to fold fitted sheets properly. Someone who's never been married before and will probably make rookie mistakes. Someone whose parents are going to have very strong opinions about their son marrying an older woman. Are you trying to talk me out of proposing? I'm trying to tell you that I love all of those things about you, just like I hope you love all the ridiculous things about me. I opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant band that was absolutely perfect. Yes, by the way, obviously yes. Victoria slipped the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly. How did you know my size? I asked your mother. You asked my mother? I called her last week and explained the situation. She was surprisingly supportive, especially after I assured her that you were happy and that I had no interest in changing. What exactly did you tell her? That age is just a number, but love is everything. As the sun set over the San Juan Islands, I held my 53-year-old fiancé and realized that Victoria had been right all along. Age wasn't just a number. It was experience, wisdom, perspective. But love transcended all of that, creating something entirely new between two people willing to build a future together despite what anyone else thought was appropriate or conventional. 6 months later, we were married in a small ceremony on the same deck where Victoria had proposed to me. Rachel officiated, Michael walked his mother down the aisle, and my parents cried happy tears as they welcomed Victoria into our family. Age difference that had once seemed so significant became irrelevant in the face of everything we'd built together. We weren't 28-year-old and 53-year-old anymore. We were just Daniel and Victoria, two people who'd found something real in the most unexpected circumstances. And we were absolutely right about one thing. Age really was just a number after all. Marriage, I discovered, was an entirely different beast than dating. While our courtship had been filled with the excitement of discovery and the thrill of overcoming obstacles, married life brought a new set of challenges that tested our relationship in ways I hadn't anticipated. The first surprise came just 3 months after our wedding when Victoria received an offer that would change everything. Blackstone Global Marketing, one of the largest firms on the West Coast, wanted her to head their new Seattle division. The position would triple her salary, give her equity in the company, and provide the kind of platform she'd been working toward her entire career. It's everything I've ever wanted professionally, she told me over dinner at our favorite restaurant, the same place where we'd had our first real date as a couple. But the timing feels complicated. Because of the business? I asked, referring to Martinez Strategic Consulting, which had grown to include 2 full-time employees and contracts with 8 major clients. Because of us. Because we just got married and we're still figuring out how to blend our lives. Because accepting this position would mean even more travel, longer hours, and less time to focus on building our marriage. I reached across the table and took her hand. Victoria, you've spent the last year making compromises for our relationship. You restructured your entire professional situation to eliminate conflicts of interest. You've turned down opportunities because they might create distance between us. This is your moment. What about your business? You've built something incredible, and a lot of that growth came from my connections and referrals. If I leave Henderson, and the consulting world becomes more competitive, then I'll adapt. That's what entrepreneurs do. Victoria studied my face carefully. You're sure about this? Because once I accept, there's no going back. Blackstone operates at a completely different level than Henderson. The demands, the expectations, the pressure, it's going to affect our entire life. I'm sure. Take the job. What I wasn't prepared for was how dramatically Victoria's new position would impact our daily routine. Within weeks of starting at Blackstone, she was traveling 2 weeks out of every month, managing teams in 3 different cities, and working with clients whose campaigns had budgets larger than my company's entire annual revenue. The intellectual stimulation energized her in ways I hadn't seen before. She would call me from airports and hotel rooms, excited about new strategies and challenging projects. But the physical absence was harder than either of us had expected. I feel like we're roommates who occasionally coordinate schedules, Victoria said during one of our phone calls. She was in Portland for a client presentation, and I was home alone for the 5th night in 2 weeks. Expensive roommates with excellent benefits, I replied, trying to keep the mood light. I'm serious, Daniel. This isn't what I wanted marriage to feel like. What did you want it to feel like? Partnership. Building something together instead of running parallel lives that occasionally intersect. Her words stung because they captured something I'd been feeling but hadn't wanted to acknowledge. We were both successful, both pursuing our professional dreams, but we were doing it separately instead of as a team. The solution came from an unexpected source. During one of her trips to Los Angeles, Victoria mentioned my consulting firm to a Blackstone client who was struggling with market research and strategic planning. Within a week, I had a contract proposal that would essentially embed Martinez Strategic Consulting as Blackstone's preferred external research partner. This could be huge for your business, Victoria explained over a video call from her hotel room. But I want to be completely transparent about the potential conflicts. This client relationship exists because of our marriage, and that makes things complicated. More complicated than when we were working together directly. Different. Complicated. If your work doesn't meet their standards, it reflects poorly on my judgment. If it exceeds their expectations, people might assume I'm giving you unfair advantages. And if I don't take the opportunity, then you miss out on the kind of growth that could establish your firm as a major player in the industry. I spent 3 sleepless nights weighing the decision. Taking the Blackstone contract would mean working indirectly with Victoria again, but it would also mean potentially tripling my business revenue and establishing relationships with clients I could never access on my own. I'm taking it, I told her during our next call. But with conditions. What conditions? First, I want everything documented thoroughly. Contracts, performance metrics, evaluation criteria. Everything transparent and measurable. Second, I want to succeed or fail based on the quality of my work, not because of our personal relationship. And third, I want us to be partners again. Not just in marriage, but professionally. I want to build something together instead of separately. The Blackstone partnership transformed both our careers and our marriage. Instead of Victoria traveling alone for client meetings, I often accompanied her to provide research support and strategic analysis. Instead of working separately and updating each other during evening phone calls, we were collaborating on projects that utilized both our strengths, but success brought new challenges. The whispers that had died down after our marriage returned with renewed intensity. Industry colleagues speculated about nepotism, questioned whether my rapid business growth was merit-based, and made subtle comments about power couples and conflicts of interest. The criticism reached a breaking point during a marketing conference in Chicago. Victoria was giving a keynote presentation about innovative client partnerships when someone in the audience asked a pointed question about her husband's consulting firm and whether Blackstone's relationship with Martinez Strategic represented a conflict of interest. Victoria's response was masterful. She acknowledged the question directly, explained the transparent evaluation processes in place, and provided specific performance metrics that demonstrated the value of the partnership. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tightening around her eyes that indicated how much the question had bothered her. "That was brutal," I said afterward as we walked back to our hotel. "It was expected. This is the price we pay for mixing business with personal relationships. Do you regret it?" Victoria stopped walking and turned to face me in the middle of the busy sidewalk. "Daniel, I need you to understand something. I will never regret marrying you. I will never regret building a life with you. But I hate that your professional reputation gets questioned because of our relationship." "My professional reputation is fine. More than fine, actually. My business has grown exponentially, my client satisfaction rates are excellent, and I'm working on projects I never could have accessed without the Blackstone partnership. Projects you got because you're married to me. Projects I'm excelling at because of skills I learned working with you and knowledge I've developed independently. Victoria, the door might have opened because of our relationship, but I'm the one walking through it and doing the work." That evening in our Chicago hotel room, we had the most honest conversation about our marriage we'd ever shared. Victoria talked about her fears that she was inadvertently limiting my independence by providing opportunities through her network. I admitted my own concerns about whether I was truly earning my success or benefiting from her established reputation. "What if we're approaching this all wrong?" Victoria said as we sat on the hotel bed, room service dinner half finished between us. "What do you mean? What if instead of trying to separate our professional and personal lives, we embrace the partnership completely? What if we stop apologizing for being married to each other and start leveraging it intentionally? You want to work together officially? I want to start our own firm, Sterling Martinez Strategic Solutions. Equal partners, shared vision, combined expertise." The idea was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. "Victoria, you just accepted your dream job at Blackstone." My dream job was building something meaningful with someone I love. Blackstone was just the best option available at the time. Now there's a better option. Starting a business together could either be the best decision we ever make, or it could destroy our marriage. Victoria smiled. "Everything we've done together has been a risk. Starting a relationship despite the age difference and office politics was a risk. Getting married after 18 months was a risk. Working together professionally was a risk. So far, taking risks together has worked out pretty well for us. Over the next 6 months, we planned our exit strategy from our respective companies and developed a business plan for Sterling Martinez Strategic Solutions. The firm would focus on comprehensive marketing strategy and implementation, combining Victoria's senior-level industry relationships with my analytical approach and fresh perspectives. The launch was more successful than we'd dared to hope. Within the first year, we had 12 major clients, including 2 Fortune 500 companies and several high-growth startups. The age difference that had once been a source of speculation became a marketing advantage. Clients appreciated having both seasoned experience and contemporary insights on their strategic team. But the real transformation was in our marriage. Working together as true partners eliminated the competing priorities and scheduling conflicts that had strained our relationship during the Blackstone period. We were building something together, combining our strengths instead of pursuing separate goals. "This is what I wanted," Victoria told me one evening as we reviewed quarterly financial reports in our shared home office. "Not just professional success, but success that we created together. Even when I disagree with your client management approach, especially then. You challenge my assumptions and make me think differently about problems. That's invaluable. Even when you have to explain basic industry concepts to me. Your fresh perspective keeps me from falling into the same patterns I've used for decades. We balance each other." The second year of Sterling Martinez brought international expansion and industry recognition. Victoria was named Marketing Executive of the Year by the Pacific Northwest Business Journal. I was featured in Entrepreneur magazine as one of 30 under 30 marketing innovators. But more importantly, we were profiled together in Harvard Business Review as an example of successful business partnerships built on complementary expertise. The article mentioned our age difference and unconventional beginning, but framed it as a strength rather than an oddity. "Sterling and Martinez demonstrate that effective partnerships transcend traditional boundaries," the reporter wrote. Their 25-year age gap provides both historical perspective and contemporary insight, creating strategic solutions that appeal to multi-generational audiences. Reading that article together was a moment of vindication for both of us. The age difference that had once seemed like an obstacle had become an integral part of our professional identity and competitive advantage. But it was during our second wedding anniversary that Victoria shared something that surprised me completely. "I want to tell you about a conversation I had with Rachel last week," she said as we sat on our deck, celebrating with champagne and takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. Good conversation or concerning conversation? Illuminating conversation. She told me that watching our relationship has changed how she thinks about her own dating life. How so? She said that before seeing us together, she always focused on finding someone at exactly the same life stage, with the same goals and timeline. But watching us has made her realize that compatibility is more about values and communication than about age or identical experiences. I was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. Does that worry you? That we might be influencing how your children approach relationships? No, it makes me proud. We've shown them that love doesn't follow conventional patterns, and that successful partnerships require effort and compromise, regardless of the ages involved. What about your concerns about being judged for our age difference? Victoria smiled. I realized that the people who judge us for our age difference are the same people who would find something else to criticize if we were the same age. You can't build a life around avoiding other people's opinions. Age really is just a number. Age is experience, wisdom, perspective, all valuable things. But it's not a barrier to love or partnership when two people are willing to work together. That night, as we cleaned up the remnants of our anniversary dinner, Victoria brought up something she'd been considering for months. "I want to write a book," she said suddenly. "About what?" "About us. About building successful partnerships despite age differences, about navigating professional relationships when you're married to your business partner, about taking risks later in life." "You want to write about our relationship?" "I want to write about the lessons we've learned. How to balance personal and professional partnerships. How to handle criticism and speculation. How to build something meaningful together when you're coming from different starting points." The idea excited me more than I expected. What would you call it? Victoria grinned. Age is just a number. Building successful partnerships across generations. I love it. But you should probably include some cautionary advice too. Not every age gap relationship works out as well as ours has. That's exactly why I want to write it, to help people understand what works, what doesn't, and how to navigate the unique challenges. 6 months later, Victoria's book proposal was accepted by a major publisher. The advance was substantial, but more importantly, the book represented our story being shared with a broader audience, not as a curiosity or exception, but as an example of what's possible when two people focus on building something together. Instead of worrying about what other people think, as I watched Victoria work on her manuscript, interviewing other couples with significant age differences, and researching the psychology of intergenerational relationships, I realized how far we'd both come from that first awkward interview in the Henderson conference room. We'd built a successful business, a strong marriage, and a partnership that transcended the age difference that had once seemed so significant. More importantly, we'd proven to ourselves and others that love, respect, and shared values matter more than the number of years between two people's birth dates. Any regrets? Victoria asked me one evening as she finished writing the final chapter of her book. About what? About falling in love with someone 25 years older than you. About the complications, the speculation, the professional challenges. I looked at this remarkable woman who had transformed my life in every possible way. The only thing I regret is that we didn't meet sooner. Victoria laughed. If we'd met sooner, you would have been 3 years old when I graduated from college. Then I regret that time travel isn't possible. Age really is just a number, isn't it? No, I said, pulling her close. Age is experience, wisdom, and perspective. But love transcends all of that. That's what makes it so powerful. And as we sat together in our home office, surrounded by the evidence of everything we'd built together, I knew that Victoria had been right from the very beginning. Age was just a number, but love was everything. 3 years into our marriage, Victoria and I faced our first real crisis. It started with something that should have been cause for celebration. Her book, Age is Just a Number, had become a bestseller, climbing to number 3 on the New York Times business book list and generating speaking requests from around the world. But success brought unexpected scrutiny. An investigative journalist from a major business publication decided to do an in-depth profile of our company, our relationship, and what he called the business of selling age gap romance. His approach was cynical from the beginning, suggesting that our entire relationship was a calculated marketing strategy designed to generate publicity and business opportunities. He's been calling our clients, Victoria told me after a particularly frustrating phone conversation with our publicist, asking whether they hired us because of our professional qualifications or because our story makes good marketing copy for their own diversity initiatives. I felt a familiar knot of frustration forming in my stomach. What are our clients saying? Most of them are defending us, but a few are starting to question whether working with us creates unwanted attention for their own companies. The journalist, Kevin Reeves, had built his reputation on exposing what he considered fake business success stories. His previous articles had taken down several entrepreneurs whose companies were built on hype rather than substance. Now he was suggesting that Sterling Martinez Strategic Solutions was another example of style over substance. He wants to interview both of us separately, Victoria continued. His questions are designed to create contradictions in our stories, to suggest that we're not being honest about how our relationship began or how our business operates. Should we do the interviews? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. If we refuse, it looks like we're hiding something. If we participate, he's going to twist whatever we say to fit his narrative. The dilemma consumed us for weeks. Our lawyer advised against cooperating with what seemed like a hostile investigation. Our publicist thought we should get ahead of the story by controlling the narrative. Our business partners worried about the potential impact on client relationships. Decision was made for us when Reeves published a preliminary article without interviewing us directly. The piece, titled, "When Business Gets Personal, the Sterling Martinez Marketing Machine," suggested that our entire relationship was an elaborate business strategy designed to generate publicity and attract clients looking for unconventional marketing approaches. According to industry sources, the article read, "The age gap relationship between Victoria Sterling, 56, and Daniel Martinez, 31, has become the primary selling point for their consulting firm. Clients report being more interested in the novelty of working with an unusual couple than in the actual strategic services provided." The article was devastating not because it was entirely false, but because it contained just enough truth to be believable. Our relationship had opened doors professionally. Clients were curious about our dynamic. Some of our speaking engagements focused as much on our personal story as our business expertise. "Maybe he's right," I said to Victoria as we read the article, together in our home office. "Maybe we have been using our relationship to market ourselves." "Is that necessarily a bad thing?" Victoria asked quietly. "We've been honest about who we are and how we work together. If clients are interested in that, why shouldn't we leverage it? Because it makes everything we've built feel artificial. Like we're performers instead of business partners." Victoria closed her laptop and turned to face me. "Daniel, every business uses whatever advantages they have. Companies hire former CEOs for their connections. Firms promote their founders' Ivy League educations. Startups emphasize their founders' youth and innovation. We happen to have an interesting personal story that differentiates us in the marketplace. But what if the story becomes more important than the work? Then we make sure the work speaks for itself." Over the next month, we made a deliberate decision to let our professional results address the criticism. Instead of responding to Reeves' article directly, we focused on delivering exceptional work for our existing clients and pursuing new projects based solely on our strategic capabilities. The approach worked, but slowly. Several potential clients who had been considering our services decided to wait until the controversy died down. 2 existing clients completed their contracts but chose not to renew, citing concerns about unwanted media attention. But other clients, particularly those who had worked with us extensively, publicly defended our professionalism and the quality of our strategic work. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Amanda Chen, the CEO of a major tech startup, published a detailed LinkedIn article about her experience working with Sterling Martinez Strategic Solutions. She addressed the Reeves article directly, explaining that she had initially been curious about our personal story, but had hired us based on a comprehensive proposal that demonstrated a deep understanding of her company's challenges. "I couldn't care less about Daniel and Victoria's personal relationship," Chun wrote. "What I care about is that they developed a market entry strategy that increased our user acquisition by 300% and helped us secure $50 million in Series B funding. Their age difference is irrelevant to their professional capabilities." Chun's post went viral within the business community, generating dozens of similar testimonials from other clients. The narrative began to shift from skepticism about our motives to recognition of our professional achievements. But the real vindication came 6 months later when Reeves himself reached out to request an interview, not for another critical article, but for a follow-up piece acknowledging that his initial coverage had been premature and overly cynical. "I've spent the last several months investigating your actual business results," he admitted during our video call. "Your client retention rate is 94%, your average project ROI is 340%, and your client satisfaction scores are consistently above industry benchmarks. Whatever your initial motivations, you've built a legitimate and highly successful consulting firm. What changed your mind?" Victoria asked. Data. I approached this story assuming that novelty was disguising incompetence. But the numbers don't lie. Your firm delivers results that most established consulting companies would envy. The follow-up article, titled Beyond the Headlines, When Personal Stories Meet Professional Excellence, became one of the most read business pieces of the year. Reeves acknowledged his initial bias and used our story as an example of how unconventional backgrounds could actually strengthen business performance rather than undermining it. Sterling and Martinez demonstrate that personal authenticity and professional competence aren't mutually exclusive, he wrote. Their age gap relationship initially attracted attention, but their strategic expertise has sustained their success. The controversy had an unexpected positive outcome. Instead of damaging our reputation, it forced us to articulate more clearly what we offered beyond personal novelty. We developed more sophisticated marketing materials that emphasized our methodologies and results. We restructured our speaking engagements to focus primarily on business strategy, with personal story as supporting context. Most importantly, the experience strengthened our partnership. Working through the crisis together, defending our professional integrity while maintaining our personal relationship, proved that we could handle external pressure without compromising what we'd built together. I'm proud of how we handled that, Victoria said one evening as we reflected on the entire experience. We didn't let someone else's narrative define us or change how we operate. Are you worried about future criticism? There will always be people who question unconventional success stories. But we've proven to ourselves and our clients that our work stands on its own merits. The success of Victoria's book led to unexpected opportunities beyond consulting. Publishers began approaching us about writing additional books together, not just about age gap relationships, but about business partnerships, strategic planning, and entrepreneurship. Speaking bureaus wanted us for conferences focused on innovation and unconventional business approaches. We were selective about these opportunities, accepting only those that aligned with our core expertise and values. But gradually, we found ourselves becoming thought leaders not just in marketing strategy, but in the broader conversation about how personal authenticity could enhance professional effectiveness. The most meaningful opportunity came from Harvard Business School, which invited us to develop a case study about Sterling Martinez strategic solutions for their entrepreneurship curriculum. The case study would examine how we had built a successful consulting firm while navigating the unique challenges of being business partners, who were also married with a significant age difference. This feels like full circle validation, Victoria said as we worked with the Harvard professors to develop the teaching materials. From being subjects of suspicious investigation to being examples of successful business strategy. What do you think students will learn from our case study? That authenticity is a competitive advantage. That personal differences can create business strengths. That success requires both professional competence and personal resilience. The Harvard case study was published the following year and became one of the most requested teaching materials in their entrepreneurship program. Business schools around the country began using our story to illustrate principles of partnership, differentiation, and authentic marketing. But perhaps the most significant development came when Victoria turned 58 and I turned 33. The age gap that had once seemed so significant now felt almost irrelevant. We had been married for 4 years, business partners for 3, and had built something substantial together. I realized something yesterday, Victoria told me as we celebrated her birthday at the same restaurant where we'd had our first official date. I stopped thinking about our age difference entirely. It's just not part of how I see us anymore. When did that happen? Gradually, over the past year. When we were dealing with the Reeves investigation, when we were building the Harvard case study, when we were making decisions about the business, none of that had anything to do with how old we are. It was just us, working together as partners. I reflected on my own experience. You're right. I think about you as my wife, my business partner, my best friend. The age thing only comes up when other people bring it up. Do you think that's what maturity looks like? When external characteristics become less important than what you've built together. Maybe, or maybe that's what real partnership looks like. Victoria raised her wine glass to partnerships that transcend demographics, to prove that age really is just a number. No, Victoria said, smiling. To prove that love and respect and shared goals matter more than numbers. As we clinked glasses, I realized that we had reached a place I'd never anticipated when we first started dating. The age difference hadn't disappeared or become irrelevant. It had been integrated into who we were as a couple and as business partners. Victoria's additional life experience remained valuable, and my different generational perspective continued to contribute to our strategic approaches. But these differences had become strengths rather than obstacles. The following year brought our biggest business opportunity yet. A Fortune 100 company approached us about a comprehensive rebranding strategy that would involve coordinating efforts across 12 international markets. The project timeline was 18 months, the budget was 8 figures, and the complexity was unlike anything we'd tackled before. This is the kind of project that establishes firms as major industry players, Victoria explained as we reviewed the proposal. But it's also the kind of project that can destroy smaller firms if they're not prepared for the scale and complexity. Are we prepared? Professionally, yes. We have the expertise, the team, and the methodological approach. Personally, I'm not sure. This project would require extensive international travel, long periods away from home, and stress levels we've never experienced. What's your instinct? Victoria was quiet for several minutes. My instinct is that we're ready for this challenge, that we've built something strong enough to handle whatever pressure this project creates. Then let's do it. Even if it means spending half our time in airports and hotel rooms for the next year and a half. Even then, we'll figure out how to make it work. The Fortune 100 project became the defining experience of our professional partnership. The complexity pushed both of us beyond our previous capabilities, requiring us to develop new systems, hire additional team members, and coordinate efforts across multiple time zones and cultural contexts. But instead of straining our relationship, the intensity brought us closer together. Working 18-hour days in foreign cities, solving complex problems under enormous pressure, and managing the most demanding clients either of us had ever encountered. We did it all as a team. I couldn't do this with anyone else, Victoria told me during a brief break between client meetings in Frankfurt. The trust, the communication, the shared commitment, this only works because of what we've built together. Professional partnership or personal partnership? Both. They're completely integrated now. The project concluded successfully 15 months later, generating results that exceeded the client's expectations and establishing Sterling Martinez Strategic Solutions as one of the premier consulting firms on the West Coast. But more importantly, it proved to both of us that our partnership could handle whatever challenges we chose to pursue. What's next? Victoria asked as we celebrated the project completion with champagne in our Seattle office. Whatever we want, we've proven we can handle anything. Victoria smiled. In that case, I have an idea. What kind of idea? The kind that involves opening offices in 3 more cities and taking on projects that are even more ambitious than anything we've done before. I looked at my 59-year-old wife and business partner, still as driven and ambitious as she'd been when we first met 7 years earlier. Age really is just a number, isn't it? Age is experience, wisdom, and perspective, Victoria replied. But ambition is ageless. And as we began planning the next phase of our business expansion, I knew she was absolutely right. 10 years. That's how long it had been since Victoria Sterling walked into that conference room and changed my life forever. As I sat in our expanded Seattle headquarters, watching her press into a room full of potential investors for our newest venture, I marveled at how far we'd both come. Victoria was now 63, her silver hair completely white, but her energy and sharp intellect unchanged. I was 38, no longer the uncertain young man seeking validation, but someone who had built something substantial alongside the woman I loved. The age gap that had once defined us externally had become simply part of our story, not the central theme. The market opportunity is unprecedented, Victoria was explaining to the investors, her voice carrying the same confidence that had first impressed me years ago. Generational marketing has evolved beyond demographics. Companies need strategies that authentically connect across age groups, not just target them separately. Our newest venture, Cross-Gen Strategies, represented the culmination of everything. We'd learned about leveraging generational differences as business advantages. Instead of consulting for individual companies, we were creating a platform that would help businesses develop marketing approaches that resonated with multiple age groups simultaneously. The irony wasn't lost on me. We'd started as an unusual couple whose age difference generated curiosity. Now we were industry experts, specifically because of how we'd learned to bridge generational perspectives professionally. After the investor presentation concluded successfully, Victoria and I walked to our favorite coffee shop near Pike Place Market. It had become our tradition after major business milestones, returning to the simple pleasure of conversation over good coffee, regardless of how complex our professional lives had become. $17 million in Series A funding, Victoria said. Still processing the morning's success. I keep thinking about that first day when you interviewed at Henderson, when I had no idea that hiring you would completely reshape my life. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't hired me? Victoria considered the question seriously. You would have found another opportunity and built something impressive anyway. You had the talent and drive. You just needed the right environment to develop them. And you? I probably would have continued climbing the corporate ladder, achieved more traditional success, and remained fundamentally unhappy without understanding why. I reached across the table and took her hand, noting the wedding ring that had become as natural as breathing over the past 7 years. Any regrets? About us? Never. About some of the challenges we faced because of us? Sometimes. Which challenges? Victoria was quiet for a moment. I regret that your professional achievements were questioned because of our relationship. I regret that we had to work twice as hard as other couples to prove our business partnership was legitimate. I regret that we spent so much energy defending our choices instead of simply enjoying them. But those challenges also made us stronger. I pointed out, we developed better communication, clearer boundaries, and more resilience than we might have otherwise. True, and they gave us unique insights that became the foundation of our current business. As we sat in the coffee shop, I reflected on the specific moments that had defined our journey. The initial attraction that neither of us had expected. The professional mentorship that evolved into partnership. The office gossip and HR investigations. The decision to start our own company. The media scrutiny and ultimate vindication. Each challenge had required us to articulate more clearly who we were and what we wanted to build together. I want to tell you something I've never said before, Victoria said suddenly. What? The night before our wedding, I was terrified. Not about marrying you, but about whether I was being selfish. Selfish how? You were 30 years old with your whole life ahead of you. I was 55 with most of my major life decisions already made. I worried that by marrying you, I was limiting your options, preventing you from experiencing things with someone at your own life stage. I was surprised by this admission. Victoria had seemed completely confident about our engagement. And wedding, what changed your mind? Rachel said something during the rehearsal dinner that stuck with me. She said that true partnership isn't about being at identical life stages. It's about being committed to growing together regardless of where you start. She was right. More right than I realized at the time. Over the past 7 years, we've both changed dramatically. You've become more confident, more strategic, more comfortable with leadership. I've become more flexible, more open to new approaches, more willing to take risks. We've grown toward each other. Exactly. Instead of me limiting your development or you making me feel outdated, we've influenced each other in positive ways. This conversation reminded me of something that had been on my mind for several months. Victoria's next birthday would mark a significant milestone, not just personally, but in terms of how we thought about our future together. I want to discuss something with you, I said carefully. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just important. You're going to be 64 next month. Thank you for the reminder, Victoria said dryly. I'm thinking about retirement planning. Not immediate retirement, but how we want to structure the next phase of our lives and careers. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting I'm getting too old for the consulting business? I'm suggesting that we have enough financial security to be selective about how we spend our time and energy. Cross-gen strategies could run largely without us if we structure it properly. We could travel more, pursue personal interests, maybe write another book together. You want to semi-retire at 38? I want to have the option to semi-retire. There's a difference. Victoria smiled. I appreciate that you're thinking about our future, but I'm not ready to slow down yet. This new venture feels like the most exciting project we've ever undertaken. What about in 5 years, or 10? In 5 years, I'll be 68 and you'll be 43. That seems like a more natural time to transition to less intensive work. And you're not concerned about the age difference becoming more significant as we get older? Victoria's expression became serious. Daniel, I'm going to be honest with you about something I think about sometimes. There's a reasonable possibility that I'll experience health issues or cognitive decline before you do, simply because I'm older. That's not something either of us can control. What do you think about that? I think about making sure that whatever time we have together is meaningful and fulfilling. I think about building things that will last beyond both of us. I think about enjoying each day instead of worrying about some hypothetical future. Her honesty was both sobering and reassuring. We'd never discussed the practical implications of aging at different rates, but it was an inevitable aspect of our age gap relationship. What do you need from me as we navigate that reality? I asked, the same thing I've always needed from you. Partnership, honesty, and commitment to building something together, for as long as we're both capable of doing so. And if your health changes, then we adapt. The same way we've adapted to every other challenge. That evening, we hosted a dinner party at our home to celebrate the successful funding round. Rachel and Michael were both in town, along with several business colleagues who had become close friends over the years. As I watched Victoria hold court at our dining room table, animated and engaged in discussions about market trends and strategic planning, I was struck by how seamlessly she moved between roles: business partner, wife, mother, friend, industry expert. She's remarkable, said Jennifer Walsh, one of our investors, as we stood on the deck after dinner. I've worked with executives half her age who have a fraction of her energy and insight. Victoria has always been remarkable, I replied. Age has nothing to do with it. How do you handle people's assumptions about your relationship? The age difference must generate commentary, less than it used to. When people see the quality of our work and the strength of our partnership, demographics become irrelevant. Any advice for other couples navigating similar situations? I considered the question carefully. Focus on building something meaningful together instead of defending your choices to people who don't understand them. Let your results speak louder than other people's opinions. Later that night, as Victoria and I cleaned up from the dinner party, She brought up something that had been mentioned during the evening conversation. "Jennifer asked me about succession planning for cross-gen strategies," she said, loading dishes into the dishwasher. "What did you tell her?" "That we're building something designed to outlast both of us." But it made me think about legacy, what we want to leave behind beyond just financial success. "What kind of legacy?" Victoria paused her cleaning and turned to face me. "I want our story to matter to other people. Not just as entertainment or inspiration, but as proof that unconventional partnerships can create extraordinary results. I think we've already accomplished that. Professionally, yes. But I want to do something more intentional about sharing what we've learned about relationships, business partnerships, and navigating age differences." "Like what?" "A foundation, maybe. Or a mentorship program for couples starting businesses together. Something that helps other people build successful partnerships regardless of their demographics." The idea energized me immediately. We could create a platform for non-traditional business partnerships, age gap couples, but also partnerships across racial, cultural, or educational differences. Exactly. Use our experience to help others who face similar skepticism or challenges. Over the following months, we developed the Sterling Martinez Partnership Foundation, dedicated to supporting unconventional business partnerships through mentorship, funding, and educational resources. The foundation became our most personally meaningful project, allowing us to give back to communities that faced similar challenges to what we'd experienced. But the real validation came from an unexpected source. Harvard Business School invited us to deliver the closing keynote at their annual entrepreneurship conference. The theme was partnerships that transcend boundaries, and we were asked to share our insights about building successful collaborations. Despite demographic differences, standing on that stage together, looking out at an audience of future business leaders, I felt the full weight of how far we'd traveled from that first awkward interview at Henderson Marketing Solutions. "Age is just a number," Victoria began, echoing the phrase that had become central to our story. "But that doesn't mean age is irrelevant. Age represents experience, perspective, and wisdom, all valuable assets in business partnerships. The key," I continued, "is learning to leverage demographic differences as competitive advantages, rather than viewing them as obstacles to overcome." We spent the next hour sharing specific strategies for building trust across generational divides, managing power dynamics in age gap partnerships, and transforming external skepticism into internal strength. The audience was engaged, asking thoughtful questions about everything from conflict resolution to succession planning. "What would you tell your younger selves about starting this journey?" asked a student during the Q&A session. Victoria and I looked at each other, sharing one of those silent communications that had developed over years of partnership. "I would tell my younger self to trust the process," Victoria said. "Don't try to rush past the challenging phases or avoid difficult conversations. Every obstacle you face together makes the partnership stronger." I would tell my younger self that age really is just a number, I added, but love, respect, and shared commitment are everything. After the keynote, as we walked across Harvard's campus in the early spring sunshine, Victoria took my arm and smiled. "Do you realize what just happened in there?" she asked. "We gave a presentation. We came full circle. 10 years ago, we were the subjects of suspicious investigation. Today, we're teaching future business leaders about successful partnerships. How does that feel? Like vindication? Like proof that taking risks together was worth every challenge we faced?" That evening, in our Boston hotel room, Victoria surprised me with something she'd been working on for months. "I have a proposal for you," she said, pulling out a folder filled with documents and photographs. "Another business venture? A personal venture. I want us to take a sabbatical next year. 6 months of traveling, exploring places we've always talked about visiting but never had time to see." I looked through the materials she'd prepared, detailed itineraries for New Zealand, Italy, Japan, and several other destinations we discussed over the years. What about cross-gen strategies? We've built a strong enough team that the company can operate without us for 6 months. This is our chance to enjoy what we've created instead of constantly building the next thing. You want to take 6 months off? I want to spend 6 months focusing entirely on us. No client meetings, no investor presentations, no deadlines. Just us, exploring the world together. The idea was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. We'd never taken more than 2 weeks off together in all our years of partnership. What made you think of this now? Victoria sat down beside me on the hotel bed. Today, listening to ourselves talk about building successful partnerships, I realized that we've spent so much energy proving our relationship works professionally that we haven't taken enough time to simply enjoy it personally. Are you worried that we won't know how to be together without work as a central focus? A little. But I'm more excited than worried. We fell in love as people, not just as business partners. I want to rediscover that foundation. 6 months later, we were standing on a hilltop in Tuscany, watching the sunset over rolling vineyards, completely disconnected from emails and conference calls for the first time in over a decade. This was a brilliant idea, I told Victoria as we shared a bottle of local wine. It was necessary. I didn't realize how much I needed this until we started. What's the best part? Remembering why I fell in love with you in the first place. Not the ambitious entrepreneur or the strategic thinker, but Daniel, the person who makes me laugh, who asks thoughtful questions, who sees possibilities where other people see problems. Age really is just a number, isn't it? Victoria smiled. The same radiant expression I'd first fallen in love with years ago in that Seattle conference room. Age is just a number, she agreed. But love is timeless. As we sat together on that Italian hillside, two people who had built something extraordinary despite every conventional reason why it shouldn't have worked, I knew that Victoria had been right from the very beginning. Age was just a number. But what we'd created together was everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.